Yoga and relationships. The beginning of the path of yoga is to understand the relationship between the body, the mind, and the living force within us. Yoga means to reconnect, to reunite. And yoga really is about relationship. To reconnect, reunite with what? With who? That we'll try to explain briefly. So the Bhagavad Gita, which is a great yogic scripture, and Patanjali Yoga Sutras, they focus on the first question of life. Who am I? This is the fundamental basic class of yoga. Who am I? We have a body, we have a mind, and we are the living force within this body and mind. We're seeing through the eyes, hearing through the ears, tasting through the tongue, feeling through the flesh, thinking through the brain, loving through the heart. But who is that I? There are people who are blind, who are just as much alive as us. So that means we're not eyes. There are people who are deaf. That means we're not ears. According to the great saints and the great yogic scriptures, we are the Atma, the everlasting, eternal, living force, the soul. Living within the mind and the body. The body's always changing. Dehinosmin yatha dehe komarom yuvanam jada. At one time we're little embryos, then we become babies, then children, then adolescents, then youth, and some of us become old. We all become old, but some of us are old. And eventually we have to die. It's inevitable. Death is as natural as the setting of the sun at the end of the day. Why is it that we're so much afraid or traumatized by death? And why is that common to almost everyone? It's because we are this eternal, everlasting soul. But when we identify ourselves with the mind, which is always changing, according to certain research, the average human being has 60,000 separate thoughts every day. The mind function is accepting and rejecting, thinking, feeling, and willing. We could be having the most happy day, and then just one little piece of news comes, or we step on a thorn, and all of a sudden our mind is tormented. One day we want to embrace someone, one day we want to beat them. The next moment. It's the nature of the mind. It's always changing. The body's changing. But who is that witness? Who am I? The Gita explains, because the soul is eternal, it's unnatural to identify with death. Because there's no such thing as death. But there's an element called ego, ahankar, which causes the eternal soul to think, I am this mind and I am this body, rather than I have this mind and I have this body. As Rita so beautifully said in her wonderful little talk before this lecture of mine. She said, we are not humans seeking a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And understanding that principle puts the whole perspective of life into a new light. So what is the relationship of the body, the mind, and the soul? Yoga has various ways of harmonizing the three. Asanas, physical postures, pranayam, breath control, jnana, cultivation of knowledge, dhyan, meditation. These are all ways of harmonizing the body, the mind, with our own true spiritual essence, our origin, the soul. And when we do that, then the next step is to understand what is the soul's relationship with our origin. An example is this. We're driving in a car, and there's different types of cars. I came here today in a Honda. On the highway driving, there was Chevrolets, and there was Fords, and there was BMWs, and there was Volkswagens, and there was some old, kind of, what do they call, extinct species or endangered species like Pontiacs. Now, I can go from one car to another car. The driver's the same. So the car and the mind are like a vehicle, but we're the driver. And what is the need of the driver? The need of the car is gasoline and oil. But if we try to drink gasoline and oil, are we going to be satisfied? We have another need. So yoga is to give the body what it needs, because the body is sacred. From the perspective of yoga, everything is inherently sacred if we see it in the right perspective. Because this human body especially is a vehicle that can be utilized to take us to the most enlightened state, liberated state of pure divine love, to realize our eternity. The only nourishment that could satisfy the heart is love. Food, sensual pleasures, wealth, and prestige can satisfy the mind and the body, but only love could satisfy the heart. During my journey, when I was visiting the ghettos of Calcutta, I lived with Mother Teresa for some time. And I remember she told me something I quote often because it's so universally essential. The greatest need in the world is to solve the greatest problem. And that problem is hunger. Not hunger of the stomach, hunger of the heart. She told me that she travels the world. She has been to London, New York, Los Angeles, Boston, Sydney, Bombay. And she said in the rich, in the poor, in the powerful, in the weak, she sees the same hunger. People are starving for love. And the origin of that need for love is the soul's relationship with the divine. In the Yoga Sutras, Ishvara, the supreme controller. In the Gita, Krishna. In other scriptures, God, Allah. That one supreme being who is our ultimate origin, who is supremely sweet, who is supremely beautiful, who is supremely compassionate. We have natural tendency to love God. Savai pungshang paro dharmo yato bhaktiradhokshache. It is described in the yoga scriptures that our living force is a part of God, just like a sun ray is part of the sun planet. Qualitatively the same, but quantitatively a small part. Therefore, the highest expression of love is to serve without selfishness. Nitya siddha Krishna prema sajja kabunoi sravanadi sudititi koriyayudoi. That love of God and love for every living being is inherent within every living heart. It simply has to be awakened. And interestingly, the word religion comes from the Latin word religio, which means to bind back. Yoga and religion mean the same thing, to reconnect with our relationship with our true self, with God, and through that, with nature.